you came in this industry at a very young age, and it was male dominated at the time, right? It was not what it is now.
Mm.
So, as a young girl, how did you navigate some of the challenges that I'm sure you faced on a daily basis to just prove your mettle, prove that you are more than just somebody good to look at?
Yes, that was a struggle for me as a young woman because I had a voice and I had opinions and I had a lot of other interests, but I wasn't encouraged to express those opinions. But let me also give you a little bit of a history to the 90s, broadly, the decade of the 90s in Mumbai. It was Bombay back then. So you have to excuse me, I'll say Bombay. In Bombay, entertainment, fashion, etc. It wasn't so delineated in those days. And we were actually, all of us in the 90s were actually setting the foundation and the building blocks of what both the entertainment and the fashion industry was to become. So I started out in fashion and more specifically in advertising. I was much more a model who would appear in ad films, as they called them, in ad campaigns on the cover of magazines. I was never really a runway model. I hated the runway. I'm too short. I hate wearing heels. I didn't have that confidence and that swag of some of these other beautiful runway models. So I kind of just avoided it. But in those days in the advertising world, actually had most of the talent and creativity and glamour in the 90s. Like it was sort of the short period of time where models were stars within their own rights. They were as popular as film stars, actually, and had their own followings. So, as a model, where I was, being flown around all over to all these exotic locations and put up in five-star hotels, and I had my own following and my own identity and a certain amount of respect. There was no huge motivation to join Bollywood. Bollywood of the 90s was very different from what it is today. I like always saying when people ask me, why didn't you do more films? I would say, well, can you actually see me gyrating with Govinda? I mean, no shade to Govinda. I love him, but it was not me. I couldn't imagine myself doing it. It didn't match my sensibility. So within the advertising scene, there were a lot of very liberal minded people. So I never really dealt with anything that you might define, might fall within the Me Too movement. There was sexism, of course. There was a, patriarchal structure, but nobody actually impinged on me within advertising. Now, film at that time was a completely different world. And it was completely, everything revolved around the hero. The movie schedule, which heroine was brought on board, everything was around the hero. And remember in those days, the heroes used to actually shoot multiple films. They'd be sometimes doing triple shifts, jumping from film to film. It was bizarre. Like Mithun Chakrabarti used to say that he'd ask somebody, I don't know, what film am I doing? And that, they would just do close-ups of his face and he would have somebody just, anybody speaking the lines behind the camera, and he would just do that and then run and go to the next film. It was bizarre. It was like a factory. But yeah, women were expected to conform around the hero's schedules, around what the hero wanted. I managed to dodge, everything, including the casting couch, because I had this very weird attitude that they were not used to. I would come on with a lot of attitude. And because I wasn't really lusting after a Bollywood career, I would meet producers and I would say, well, I'm only available between these dates and take it or leave it. And they weren't used to this. And they were probably intrigued, but in the end, obviously it would never work out. And that was one of my tactics. I didn't want it to work out. But I would see a lot of other very strong women that I respected having to, kind of grovel around the hero. Hanji, yes, G. I'm such a fan, yaar. Can I get you some more coconut water? What can I do? I mean, like, it was just ridiculous. And I knew that these women were strong and opinionated on their own. But I mean, who was I to judge? It was a very, very different time. But yeah, it was tricky navigating those power structures. I'm not sure that my way was the smartest way, as in being very confrontational, being very mupat, being very strong, because there is such a thing as soft power. So some of these heroines, all of them, I don't want to take names, but all of them of the 90s, they were very strong and they managed to get their way, but it was using soft power. So sometimes you would have to change your posture and your language in order to get what you want. And again, who are we to judge? But it was a very interesting time. It's very interesting to watch all of this play out. And of course, I didn't end up saying yes to a film, or a film didn't work out until Husur, which was a completely heroine-oriented script and one of the first of its kind.